The sun was setting on the horizon of Chicago when William Thompson finished yet another meeting in his office on the top floor of one of the city's tallest skyscrapers. At 55, the construction tycoon had built an empire, but he felt a void that no material success could fill. His brown eyes, marked by worry lines, gazed at the city through the massive glass windows as his mind wandered to distant places. "Mr. Thompson?" The voice of his secretary brought him back to reality. "The helicopter is ready to take you to Spring Valley." William nodded, grabbing his Italian leather briefcase. Spring Valley was a small town in the countryside where his company planned to build a rehabilitation center. The trip would be quick. He would attend a charity event at the local church, sign some documents, and return to Chicago the same day. At least that was the plan. The helicopter flew over the pastoral landscape when William received a message from his daughter, Eleanor. "Dad, we need to talk about Mom's will. Call me when you can." He sighed, putting his phone away. Eleanor, a brilliant 28-year-old lawyer, had become a stranger ever since Elizabeth, his wife, passed away 5 years ago after a long illness. Spring Valley appeared on the horizon like a pastoral painting. Colorful houses, a central square, with a colonial church and lush green mountains in the background. The helicopter landed in a field near the town, where a welcoming committee awaited him. "Welcome to Spring Valley, Mr. Thompson." The mayor, Paul Johnson, a portly man with an easy smile, greeted him warmly. "Our town is deeply honored by your visit." William forced a polite smile as he was escorted to the church where the charity event would take place. The interior of the church was decorated with wildflowers and colorful ribbons, and the wooden pews were filled with locals, all dressed in their finest attire for the occasion. It was then that he saw them for the first time. At the altar, 2 young women joined at the torso were preparing to sing. Emily and Olivia Johnson, the conjoined twins of Spring Valley, were known in the region for their angelic voices and boundless kindness. At 25, they shared not only a body, but also a spiritual connection that transcended the physical. Emily, the sister on the right, had deep green eyes and a shy smile. Olivia on the left had a livelier and more confident gaze. Both had long brown hair that cascaded over their shoulders, and they wore elegant light blue dresses that had been specially tailored for them. When they began to sing, time stood still for William. Their voices intertwined in perfect harmony, creating a melody that touched the soul. It was as if each note carried a story of overcoming, love, and hope. The music spoke of dreams and transformation, of finding light in the darkness. William, who had attended performances in the most prestigious opera houses in the world, had never felt anything like this. It wasn't just the impeccable technique or the beauty of their voices. It was something deeper, more genuine. It was as if, for the first time in years, his heart was truly beating again. After the performance, during the reception in the parish hall, William couldn't take his eyes off the sisters. They moved with surprising grace, chatting animatedly with the local residents, their sincere laughter echoing through the room. "They are a true miracle," commented the mayor, noticing William's interest. "They grew up in an orphanage here in town, but they never let their circumstances define who they are. Today they teach music to underprivileged children and are the soul of Spring Valley." William barely heard him. His eyes met Emily's, and for a moment the world around them disappeared. There was something in that gaze, a mix of strength and vulnerability, wisdom and innocence, that deeply moved him. "Mr. Thompson?" The mayor tried to get his attention. "The documents for the land donation—" "Later," William interrupted, walking toward the sisters. "Right now there's something more important I need to do." As he approached, his phone buzzed insistently in the pocket of his Italian suit. It was Eleanor, once again trying to talk about the will. But for the first time in years, William didn't care about business, documents, or fortunes. In that moment, only the music still echoing in his heart, and the pair of eyes that had awakened something he thought was forever dormant existed. What William didn't know was that this encounter would not only change his life, but would also set off a series of events that would forever transform the small town of Spring Valley and all its inhabitants. And that his daughter Eleanor, upon discovering the events of that night, would set in motion a plan that would shake the foundations of all the certainties he had built over his lifetime. The next morning dawned with a soft mist covering Spring Valley. William, who had decided to extend his stay in town, watched the activity in the square through the window of his suite in the only hotel in the area. His meetings in Chicago had been rescheduled, and for the first time in years, business was not his priority. "Are you really determined to stay?" his assistant asked over the phone. "Eleanor has already called the office 3 times. Tell her I'll get in touch later today," William replied, adjusting his Italian tie in front of the mirror. His thoughts, however, were focused on the small music conservatory across the square, where he knew he would find Emily and Olivia. The conservatory was an old repurposed mansion with peeling yellow walls and a well-kept garden. When William arrived, the sound of a piano and children's voices filled the air. Through the window, he saw the sisters surrounded by children teaching them to sing. The scene made him smile involuntarily. "Mr. Thompson," Emily was the first to notice him at the door. Her face flushed slightly. "We didn't expect to see you again so soon." "Please call me William," he replied, feeling strangely nervous like a teenager. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," Olivia chimed in, her smile more confident than her sister's. The children were just finishing their rehearsal for the spring festival. The children said their goodbyes excitedly, leaving the 3 adults alone in the main hall of the conservatory. The place was simple but cozy, with old sheet music on the walls and a grand piano that had seen better days. This piano, William ran his fingers over the yellowed keys. It must have been magnificent in its time. It was donated 20 years ago, Emily explained. "Sometimes some keys fail, but we can still make music." "And what wonderful music it was," William commented, his eyes meeting Emily's once again. "I've never heard anything like what you sang yesterday." Olivia watched the interaction with interest. "You know, Emily composed that song. She has a special gift for composition." "Olivia," Emily protested, embarrassed. "We both composed it together like we always do everything." William noticed how the sisters moved in perfect sync, even when they disagreed. It was as if they shared not just a body, but an invisible dance that only they knew the steps to. "Would you like to have lunch with me?" he asked suddenly. "There's so much I'd like to know about your work here." The sisters exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations only they understood. It was Olivia who replied, "We'd be delighted, but we need to sort out some issues with the conservatory first. The owner is threatening to sell the property." "It's true," Emily added, concern in her voice. "Without the conservatory, many children will lose their only chance to study music." At that moment, William's phone vibrated once again. It was Eleanor now with a more insistent message. "Dad, if you don't respond, I'll personally come to this end of the world to find you. What's going on?" He put the phone away, an idea forming in his mind. "Perhaps I can help with the conservatory situation. In fact, I have some proposals I'd like to discuss with you." Emily's face lit up with hope, but Olivia maintained a cautious look. "Mr. Thompson." "William? It's very kind of you, but we don't want to be a bother." "You're not a bother," he replied with conviction. "You're a gift." The words slipped out before he could stop them, and a meaningful silence filled the room. Emily blushed again, and even Olivia seemed momentarily speechless. The moment was interrupted by the sound of a car abruptly parking in front of the conservatory. Through the window, William saw a sleek black Mercedes-Benz, and his heart sank as he recognized the vehicle. "Father," Eleanor's voice echoed down the hallway before she even appeared at the door of the room. "So this is where you've been hiding?" She stopped abruptly upon seeing the sisters, her eyes widening for a moment before narrowing into a calculated expression. Eleanor had always had the gift of assessing a situation in seconds, a skill that made her a feared attorney in the courtroom. "Eleanor," William began, but his daughter had already put on her professional smile, the one he knew all too well, the same one she used when she was about to dismantle an argument in court. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your friends, father?" Eleanor's seemingly casual tone couldn't completely mask something darker in her voice. William felt a shiver down his spine, recognizing the signs of an approaching storm. What he didn't know was that this storm would only be the beginning of a transformation that would affect everyone in ways no one could predict. Eleanor dominated the small meeting room of the hotel as if she were in her office in Chicago. Her Christian Louboutin heels tapped an irritated rhythm on the wooden floor as she paced back and forth, gesturing with her perfectly manicured hands. "A music conservatory, Father? Is that what's keeping you in this place?" She stopped, adjusting her impeccable blazer. "You cancelled 3 important meetings with international investors to play patron?" William remained seated, watching his daughter with a mix of admiration and concern. Eleanor had always had his determination, but somewhere along the way she had lost the compassion she had inherited from Elizabeth. "I'm not joking about anything, Eleanor. Spring Valley has potential, and the conservatory is just the beginning. Those sisters have a special gift." "Ah yes, the sisters." Eleanor smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Emily and Olivia Johnson. I did some research on them on the way here. Abandoned at an orphanage raised by nuns. No formal musical training. It's a touching story, isn't it?" "Eleanor, don't start." "No, Dad. You need to hear me out." She finally sat down, leaning forward. "Ever since Mum passed away, you've locked yourself in a fortress. Now suddenly you decide to get involved with this very peculiar situation. As your daughter and lawyer, I need to be concerned." Outside the room, the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows. In the hotel garden, Emily and Olivia waited, having been invited by Eleanor for tea, an invitation that William had received with apprehension. "I don't want you approaching them with ulterior motives, Eleanor." "Ulterior motives?" She laughed, a crystalline and artificial sound. "Dad, I just want to get to know them better. After all, if you're so interested in this project, it's my duty as a company executive to understand all aspects of the investment." Before William could protest, Eleanor was already on her feet, walking toward the garden. He followed her, feeling a growing unease. The hotel garden was a small oasis of well-tended flowers and ancient trees. Emily and Olivia were seated on a wrought iron bench, their hands clasped in their shared lap. Upon seeing Eleanor approaching, both rose gracefully. "What a pleasure to finally get to know you better," Eleanor smiled, sitting at the tea table with the elegance of a society. "Lady, my father can't stop talking about you." Emily blushed slightly, but it was Olivia who responded. "The pleasure is ours. Your father has been very kind." "Is kind your favorite word to describe wealthy men who show up offering help?" Eleanor asked, maintaining her smile as she poured the tea. "Eleanor," William cautioned, but Olivia didn't back down. "Actually, we prefer to judge people by their actions, not their bank accounts," she replied, her voice calm but firm. "Your father has shown genuine interest in our community and the children we teach." Eleanor took a sip of tea, studying the sisters over her porcelain cup. "Fascinating. And have you always lived here? Never thought about exploring broader horizons?" "Spring Valley is our home." Emily spoke for the first time, her voice soft but resolute. "The people here accept us as we are." "As you are?" Eleanor arched a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Two brilliant people stuck in a town too small for their talent? Or is there something else keeping you here?" William watched the exchange with growing discomfort. He knew that tone of Eleanor's all too well. It was the same one she used in court when she was about to corner a witness. "Darling, I think that's enough for today." "On the contrary, Father. We've barely begun." Eleanor smiled again, leaning forward. "In fact, I have an interesting proposal for the two of you. How about a special performance in Chicago? I can arrange something grand with all the press in attendance. It would be a unique opportunity." The sisters exchanged glances, having one of their silent conversations. It was Emily who responded. "We appreciate the invitation, but our place is here with our children." "What a shame." Eleanor leaned back in her chair, her smile never wavering. "You know, while doing my research, I came across some interesting information about the orphanage where you grew up. It seems there were some incidents in the past. It would be a shame if those stories came to light now, don't you think?" The silence that followed was deafening. William felt his heart tighten as he saw Emily's face pale, while Olivia gripped her sister's hand more tightly. "I think it's time for us to go," Olivia finally said, her voice tense. We have lessons to prepare." As the sisters withdrew, William stared at his daughter with a mix of disappointment and anger. "What do you think you're doing?" Eleanor finished her tea calmly before responding. "Protecting you, Dad, like I always have. You may not see it now, but one day you'll thank me." What Eleanor didn't realize was that her actions were about to set off a chain of events that no one could control, and that the cost of her manipulations would be far higher than she ever imagined. The morning after the tense meeting in the Fayes Hotel Garden, William found Spring Valley transformed. Whispers followed him through the central square, and curious glances trailed his steps. Somehow news of his prolonged presence in town and his interest in the conservatory had already spread, fueling the local gossip mill. Arriving at the conservatory, she found the place strangely silent. Instead of the usual children's voices and piano melodies, there was only the sound of wind through the old windows. Emily and Olivia were seated at the piano, their heads bent over sheet music, but they weren't singing. "May I come in?" William asked softly, knocking on the slightly open door. The sisters turned in unison, and he noticed dark circles under their eyes, signs of a sleepless night. Emily tried to smile, but the gesture didn't reach her green eyes, usually so expressive. "William," Olivia began, her usual confidence slightly shaken. "The children didn't come today. Some parents called to cancel the lessons." "Because of yesterday?" he asked, stepping closer to the piano. "Because of the rumors," Emily replied, her voice almost a whisper. "Your daughter, she was very efficient in spreading certain stories around town." William felt a wave of anger and shame. "I'm sorry. Eleanor she's not herself. Ever since we lost Elizabeth, You don't need to explain," Olivia interrupted, gently. "We all have our ghosts, our untold stories." Emily played a few notes on the piano, scattered notes that seemed to carry all the melancholy of the moment. "Maybe she's right in a way. Maybe we are stuck here, limiting our potential." "Don't say that." William stepped closer, sitting in a chair near the piano. "What you do here is extraordinary. These children, this music, there is more true magic here than in all the opera houses I've ever visited." "But at what cost?" Olivia questioned, her eyes meeting William's. "Your life is being affected. Your relationship with your daughter." "My life," William chuckled softly. "My life was a desert before I found you. Eleanor needs to understand that she can't control everything. She can't keep me in that fortress of loneliness forever." A meaningful silence filled the hall. Emily began to play a gentle melody, her hands dancing over the keys with grace. Olivia soon joined her, and the music grew, filling the space with a harmony that spoke of hope and possibilities. "Is it a new composition?" William asked, enchanted. "We've been working on it for a few weeks," Emily replied, a small, genuine smile finally appearing on her lips. "It's called Promises of Spring." "It's about new beginnings," Olivia added, "about finding beauty even after the storms." William watched as they moved in perfect sync at the piano, as their voices naturally intertwined in the melody, as they seemed to create their own world through the music. It was impossible not to be moved by that display of harmony and connection. "About the rumors," he began hesitantly, "about the orphanage." "Some stories are better left in the past," Olivia said firmly, her hands never leaving the piano. "What matters is who we become, not the scars we carry." "But you're not alone now," William stated with conviction. "I won't allow Eleanor or anyone else to hurt you." Emily stopped playing abruptly, turning to face him. "Why? Why do you care so much about us?" The question hung in the air, heavy, with unspoken meanings. William felt his heart race, aware that his answer could change everything. "Because for the first time in years, I feel like I've found something real, something worth fighting to protect." At that moment, heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Mayor Paul Johnson appeared at the door, his usually cheerful face marked by concern. "Sorry to interrupt, but we have a problem. The owner of the conservatory, he's received an offer to sell the property immediately, a very high offer." The sisters exchanged alarmed glances, and William felt his stomach sink. He knew that kind of maneuver all too well. It was exactly the kind of tactic Eleanor would use. "How much time do we have?" asked Olivia, her voice tense. "Until the end of the week," the mayor replied, wiping his sweaty forehead with a handkerchief. "After that, the conservatory will have to be vacated." William stood up, a new determination in his eyes. "That won't happen. I promise you." "What?" He didn't say. What he didn't need to say was that this promise meant much more than just saving a building. It was a declaration of war against his own daughter's manipulations, a vow to protect not only the conservatory, but also the new meaning he had found in his life. The music of spring promises still echoed softly in the hall, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope for a new beginning. Emily and Olivia exchanged glances, sharing one of those moments of silent understanding that only they knew, as William began to formulate a plan to face his daughter in her own game. The makeshift office in the hotel was buzzing with activity that morning. William, surrounded by documents and with his laptop open, was tirelessly working on his plan to save the conservatory. His Italian suit was tossed over a chair, the sleeves of his white shirt rolled up to his elbows, revealing a man very different from the polished businessman who had arrived in Spring Valley just a few days ago. "Are you sure about this?" asked his lawyer through the video call. "Using your personal shares as collateral is a risky move." "I'm absolutely certain," William replied, signing another document. "Have the papers ready for this afternoon." The office door swung open abruptly, and Eleanor stormed in like a hurricane in her impeccable red pantsuit. "So it's true? You're really thinking of using your shares to buy that rundown conservatory?" William calmly closed his laptop. "It's none of your business, Eleanor. These are my personal shares, not the company's." "None of my business?" She laughed humorlessly. "You're willing to risk part of your fortune for two—" She caught herself, taking a deep breath. "For two people you barely know." "That's enough, Eleanor." William stood up, facing his daughter. "We need to talk about what's really going on here. What's going on is that my father has lost his mind. First, he isolates himself from the world after Mom passes, and now, suddenly, he decides to throw everything away for some absurd romance." "Romance?" William raised an eyebrow. "So that's what you think? Am I living some kind of late fairy tale? And aren't you?" Eleanor walked closer to the window, gazing at the square outside. "I've seen how you look at them, especially at Emily. It's the same look you had with Mom." The mention of Elizabeth made William pause. For the first time, he noticed something different in Eleanor's voice. It wasn't just anger or disdain. There was pain there. "Eleanor, why are you really doing this? Why dig into their past? Why try to destroy the conservatory?" "Because someone needs to protect you." She turned, and William saw tears in her eyes. "After Mom left, you became a shadow. You buried yourself in work, built walls around yourself. Do you know how many times I tried to get close? How many Sunday lunches you cancelled? How many birthdays you missed?" William felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. "Eleanor, And now," she continued, her voice trembling, "you find two strangers in a town lost on the map, and suddenly you're willing to risk everything. To open your heart? Why for them and not for your own daughter?" The silence that followed was deafening. In the hotel garden, children laughed as they walked to school, oblivious to the drama unfolding above them. "You're right," William finally said, his voice soft. "I failed you. After your mother left, I got lost. It was easier to deal with numbers and contracts than with the emptiness she left behind, than with the guilt of not having been a better father to you." Eleanor wiped away a stubborn tear. "I don't need your apologies right now. These aren't just apologies, my daughter. It's a request for you to let me try to fix things, not just with you, but with myself. What I've found here in Spring Valley, it's not just about Emily and Olivia. It's about rediscovering who I am, about remembering what it's like to feel something beyond emptiness." "And what happens next?" Eleanor asked, her voice calmer now. "When the charm fades, when reality comes knocking? Two conjoined sisters, Dad. How do you think society will react? How will this affect the business?" "Maybe it's time to stop living worried about what society thinks," William replied, stepping closer to his daughter. Your mother used to say that life is too short to waste on fears of what others will think. Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment, and William saw in her the little girl who used to run into his arms after nightmares. "I'm scared, Dad. Scared of losing you again." "You'll never lose me," he promised, gently touching his daughter's face. "But I need you to stop this war. Emily and Olivia aren't your enemies. And whatever you've discovered about their past..." "It wasn't good," Eleanor interrupted, biting her lip. "The orphanage. There was a scandal. The nuns. The past belongs to the past," William said firmly. "We all deserve a fresh start." At that moment, a commotion from the square caught their attention. Looking out the window, they saw a small crowd forming in front of the conservatory. In the center, Emily and Olivia were facing a group of men in suits, one of them holding what appeared to be an eviction notice. "This wasn't supposed to happen today," Eleanor murmured, surprised. William stared at her. "Did you have something to do with this?" "No," she replied, and for the first time in days, he saw sincerity in her eyes. "This wasn't part of my plan." Father and daughter exchanged a glance, a moment of understanding passing between them. Something bigger was at play, and perhaps it was time to set aside their differences to face a common enemy. The central square of Spring Valley, usually a place of peace and tranquility, had turned into a silent battlefield. On one side, Emily and Olivia, surrounded by their students and their parents. On the other, three stern-looking executives led by a tall man with graying hair, whom William immediately recognized. "Anthony Vanderbilt," he murmured, quickly descending the hotel stairs with Eleanor at his heels. "I should have guessed he'd be behind this." "The king of real estate?" Eleanor asked, her heels echoing on the steps. "What does he want with a conservatory in Spring Valley?" As they reached the square, they could hear Olivia's firm voice. "This place isn't just a building. It's the cultural heart of this town, the future of dozens of children." "Gentlemen," William interrupted, his presence immediately drawing all eyes. "I believe there is a misunderstanding here. This property is not for sale." Anthony Vanderbilt smiled, a smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. "William Thompson, what a surprise to find you in this charming place, but I'm afraid you're mistaken. The owner has already accepted our offer." "Impossible," Emily protested, her voice trembling slightly. "We have a valid lease agreement for another 3 years, which can be terminated with proper compensation," one of Vanderbilt's lawyers interjected, brandishing a document. "Everything is perfectly legal." Eleanor stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with professional interest. "May I see those documents?" As she examined the papers, William observed the crowd that had gathered. Children holding musical instruments, worried parents, local merchants, all united in defense of the conservatory. In just a few days, Emily and Olivia had shown him the true meaning of community. "There's something odd here," Eleanor murmured, flipping through the documents quickly. "The date of the purchase offer. Dad, this was filed even before you arrived in Spring Valley." William stared at Vanderbilt. "What's really going on here, Anthony? This place would hardly bring significant profit for someone of your stature." The older businessman adjusted his expensive tie, his smile fading slightly. "Let's just say I have bigger plans for Spring Valley. This conservatory is just the beginning." "A tourist resort," William suddenly understood. "You want to transform the entire city." "Progress, my dear William. Something you used to understand before, well, before you let yourself be swayed by sentimentality." Emily and Olivia watched the exchange with growing apprehension. One of the children, a girl no older than 8, approached them with tears in her eyes. "Are we going to lose our music classes?" It was Eleanor who surprised everyone, crouching down to the girl's level. "No, sweetheart, you won't." She stood up, facing Vanderbilt, with the same determined look she used in court. "These documents have irregularities. The original property, records show inconsistencies that would make any current sale legally questionable." "Miss Thompson," Vanderbilt smiled condescendingly, "your reputation as a lawyer is admirable, but..." "And," she continued, ignoring him, "I have evidence that your company tried to bribe city officials to speed up the necessary approvals for your tourist project." A murmur spread through the crowd. Mayor Paul Johnson, who had been discreetly observing everything, visibly paled. "That's slander," one of Vanderbilt's lawyers protested. "No, these are facts," Eleanor shot back, grabbing her phone. "Facts that the press would love to know. I imagine your shareholders wouldn't be too pleased with the scandal." William watched, his daughter with a mix of pride and surprise. She had always been brilliant, but seeing her use her skills to protect something important rather than destroy warmed his heart. Vanderbilt maintained his composure, but his eyes betrayed his irritation. "What do you want?" "The conservatory stays," Eleanor declared, "and you will forget your plans for Spring Valley." "Or," he challenged, "or tomorrow morning, your company will be on the front page of every newspaper, and not in a positive way. Your choice." A tense silence followed. Finally, Vanderbilt gestured to his lawyers. "Let's go. Clearly, we chose the wrong time for this investment." As they withdrew, the square erupted in celebration. Children ran to hug Emily and Olivia. Parents applauded, and even the mayor seemed to have regained his color. Eleanor approached the sisters hesitantly. "I apologize for what I did earlier. I was wrong about you." Emily smiled gently. "Sometimes we need to get to know people better to truly understand them. And sometimes," Olivia added, "the biggest surprises come from where we least expect them." William watched the scene with a full heart. His daughter, who just days ago was determined to destroy all of this, was now there, defending not only the conservatory, but also a piece of her own humanity that she had lost along the way. But as the celebration continued, something in the documents Eleanor held caught his attention. A small, almost imperceptible detail that suggested the battle with Vanderbilt might not be entirely over. A shadow of concern crossed his face, but he decided to keep that discovery to himself, at least for now. This was a moment of celebration, and tomorrow would be another day to face new challenges. The evening painted the sky of Spring Valley, with shades of pink and gold, as Eleanor finally managed a moment alone with the sisters at the conservatory. The celebration of the victory against Vanderbilt had lasted the entire day, with impromptu performances by the students and a small banquet organized by the local residents. Now, as the sun set, it was time for more serious conversations. "There's something in the documents that worries me," Eleanor began, spreading papers across the old piano. "The structure of the transaction, the way it was organized. Vanderbilt isn't known for giving up on his goals easily." Emily, who was organizing sheet music left by the students, paused her work. "What exactly did you find?" "Records of other properties in the city that were purchased over the past few months through different shell companies, all connected in some way to Vanderbilt's group." Olivia approached, her usually confident face marked by concern. "So, the conservatory was just part of a bigger plan." "Exactly," Eleanor confirmed, picking up her tablet. "Look at this. There, our plans for a luxury resort that would take up almost the entire historic area of the city. The conservatory would have been just the first domino to fall. But you stopped him." Emily smiled softly. "I never thought I'd be thanking the person who, just a few days ago, was trying to push us away from her father." Eleanor felt her cheeks flush with shame. "About that, I owe more than an apology. My behavior was protective," Olivia suggested, a slight smile on her lips. "We can understand that. Love for a father can drive us to extremes." "Love and fear," Eleanor admitted, sitting down in one of the chairs in the room. "After I lost my mother, I was so afraid of losing my father too, even though in a way she had already lost him to work and solitude." Emily and Olivia exchanged a knowing glance, the kind only they could fully decipher. It was Emily who spoke. "We also know loneliness, Eleanor. Even though we always had each other, growing up in the orphanage wasn't easy." "About the orphanage?" Eleanor hesitated. "In my investigations, I found records of the scandal," Olivia finished, her voice steady. "Yes, there was a difficult time. Some nuns were accused of mistreating children with disabilities, but that wasn't our story. Our story," Emily continued, "was about finding strength in music. Sister Cecilia, our first piano teacher, taught us that our differences weren't limitations. They were what made us unique. Eleanor observed how the sisters moved in perfect harmony, even during an ordinary conversation, how their gestures naturally complemented each other. And now you pass that lesson on. Every child who walks through that door, Olivia pointed to the entrance of the conservatory, is an opportunity to show that music knows no barriers, that art can transform any reality. The sound of footsteps interrupted the conversation. William appeared at the door, carrying a folder of documents. Am I interrupting something? Actually, Eleanor smiled, I was having a very enlightening conversation with your friends. The way she said friends made William raise an eyebrow, but there was a tone of acceptance in his voice that hadn't been there before. Great, he replied, stepping closer to the group. Because we need to discuss the future of the conservatory, I have a proposal to make. The three women looked at him with curiosity, but before he could continue, a noise from the street caught their attention. Through the window, they saw a group of people gathering in front of the building, some carrying signs. What's going on? Emily asked, standing up to get a better look. Eleanor quickly checked her phone. It's a protest. Apparently someone leaked the story about Vanderbilt's project to the local press. People are protesting against the potential loss of the city's character. William smiled, but there was concern in his eyes. The community is mobilizing. That's good, but it could also attract unwanted attention, Olivia finished his thought. Exactly, he agreed. And considering what Eleanor found out about Vanderbilt's bigger plans, we need to be cautious. Emily began to softly play the piano, a melancholic melody that seemed to perfectly capture the moment of uncertainty they were experiencing. Olivia soon joined her, and the music filled the room, creating a bubble of peace amidst the growing turmoil outside. Eleanor watched the sisters with new eyes, finally understanding what her father had seen in them from the very beginning. It wasn't just about music or romance. It was about authenticity, about the ability to create beauty even in the face of adversity. Dad, she called softly, I think it's time we use all the resources we have, not just to protect the conservatory, but all of Spring Valley. William nodded, a determined glint in his eyes. I agree, and my proposal has everything to do with that. But first we need to understand exactly what we're up against. Outside, the protest grew, voices rising in protest and unity. Inside the conservatory, 4 people whom fate had improbably brought together began to form a plan that would change not only their lives but the future of an entire city. The hotel meeting room had turned into an improvised headquarters. City maps, documents and laptops covered the large wooden table, as Eleanor, now fully committed to the cause, coordinated a team of lawyers via video conference. Historical preservation is our first line of defense, she explained, marking specific points on the map. If we can prove the cultural and historical value of at least 60% of the properties in the central area, we can create a legal barrier against Vanderbilt's project. William watched his daughter with pride. In just a few days, she had gone from antagonist to the main defender of Spring Valley. More than that, she had regained something he feared was lost forever, her humanity. The conservatory could be the centerpiece of this argument, Emily suggested, stepping closer to the map. We have records of performances and cultural events held here since the city's founding. And not just that, Olivia added, picking up an old folder. We found these documents in the basement. They're sheet music and concert programs from 1922, when the building was still the first school in the region. Eleanor carefully took the documents, her eyes gleaming with professional interest. This is gold, but we need more. We need to show that Spring Valley isn't just a dot on the map. It's a living heritage. Maybe we can do that literally, William interjected, an idea forming in his mind. A cultural festival, something that shows the true soul of the city. The sisters exchanged excited glances. The Spring Festival, they exclaimed in unison. It's perfect, Emily explained, her face lighting up. Traditionally, it's just a small performance by the conservatory students, but we can turn it into something bigger. Much bigger, Olivia added. We can invite artists from across the region, revive traditional cultural expressions, bring back performances that haven't happened in years. Eleanor was already typing furiously on her laptop. If we can get media coverage, we can create significant public pressure. Vanderbilt wouldn't be able to move forward with his project without facing strong public resistance. And I can help with that, a new voice chimed in from the doorway. It was Claire Roberts, the young local journalist who had covered the protest the day before. Sorry to intrude, but I couldn't help overhearing about the festival. William gestured for her to come in. Claire was known for her passionate articles defending the region's cultural heritage. Having the local press as an ally would be crucial. Actually, Claire continued, grabbing her notebook, I've already started a series of reports on the traditional families of Spring Valley and their histories, and I found something interesting about the conservatory that you all should know. Everyone gathered around as she opened a folder of scanned documents. These are photos from the building's inauguration in 1920, and look who's in the main photo. Eleanor leaned over the screen, her eyes widening in recognition. It can't be so. That's... Yes, Claire confirmed with a smile. Anna Vanderbilt, Anthony's grandmother. She was a pianist and one of the founders of the conservatory. According to records, she dedicated her life to bringing music to the children of the region. A meaningful silence filled the room as everyone processed the information. It was Emily who first grasped the potential of the discovery. So, Vanderbilt is trying to destroy his own grandmother's legacy? And not just that, Eleanor added, her legal mind already working through the possibilities. If we can prove she left some kind of legal protection for the building... I've already thought of that, Claire interrupted, opening another file. I found her will, and you won't believe what she wrote. As Claire shared her discovery, the group began to realize that they had not only found a way to save the conservatory, but also a way to touch the heart of Vanderbilt himself. The battle was far from over, but now they had a new and powerful weapon, the story. Outside the room, the sound of children practicing their music at the conservatory came as the perfect soundtrack for the moment. Emily and Olivia exchanged glances, sharing one of those smiles that said more than words. Eleanor, noticing the look her father directed at the sisters, especially Emily, felt her heart warm with renewed understanding. You know, she whispered to William as the others discussed festival details, I think I finally understand why you fell in love with this place and with them. William hugged his daughter, kissing her forehead as he did when she was a child. And I understand why you fought so hard to protect me. But sometimes, my dear, love doesn't need protection. It just needs space to flourish. At the table, the plan to save Spring Valley was taking shape. But something even greater was happening in that room. The healing of old wounds and the birth of new bonds that, like the music that always echoed through the conservatory, promised to transform not just a place, but all the lives it touched. The last days in Spring Valley were a whirlwind of activity. The small town had turned into a hive of preparations for the Spring Festival, which would take place the next day. Colorful banners stretched across the streets of the historic center. Small stalls were set up in the central square, and the conservatory, the heart of it all, pulsed with endless rehearsals. Emily and Olivia coordinated the final preparations for the main performance, which would bring together all the conservatory students in a special showcase. The music they had composed, Promises of Spring, had gained new arrangements and would be the highlight of the evening. We need to adjust. The timing of the children's choir, Emily commented, making notes on the score. They're coming in a beat early in the second verse. And we also need to fix the piano issue, Olivia added, looking worriedly at the old instrument. It won't hold up through all of tomorrow's performances in this condition. As if answering their concerns, William entered the hall pushing a brand new grand piano followed by a team of deliverymen. The instrument gleamed under the light streaming through the old windows, its black wood impeccably polished. Surprise, he smiled, watching the sisters' eyes widen. I thought you might need some backup for tomorrow. William, Emily exclaimed, moved. We can't accept this must have cost a fortune. Actually, Eleanor interjected, entering the hall with a folder of documents, this is just the first of many investments. We've officially established the Spring Valley Cultural Foundation. Olivia looked confused at the papers Eleanor handed her. Foundation? Yes, Eleanor explained, her face lit with both professional and personal enthusiasm. A non-profit organization dedicated to preserving and promoting local culture. The conservatory will be our headquarters, but we'll have programs throughout the city. And the best part, William added, is that you two will be the artistic directors. No one is better suited to decide the cultural future of Spring Valley. The sisters exchanged glances, sharing a moment of mutual understanding that went beyond words. Their eyes glistened with held-back tears of emotion. "But what about Vanderbilt?" Olivia asked, always practical. "He hasn't officially given up on his plans yet." "That's why tomorrow needs to be perfect," Claire, the journalist, commented, entering the hall with her notebook. "Media coverage is confirmed. We have 3 TV channels and journalists from across the state. Even a representative from the Historical Heritage Institute has confirmed attendance." Eleanor smiled with satisfaction. "And I have one last surprise. I managed to get in touch with Isabella Vanderbilt, Anthony's daughter. Apparently, she's not at all happy with her father's plans to demolish her grandmother's legacy." "Isabella is coming?" William asked, surprised. "Even better," Eleanor replied. "She's bringing Anna Vanderbilt's personal diaries, pages and pages about the founding of the conservatory and her vision for Spring Valley." The group was interrupted by the sound of hurried footsteps. One of the choir children, Julia, rushed into the hall, breathless. "Teachers, there are a bunch of men outside. They're putting up yellow tape around the conservatory." Everyone ran to the windows. Sure enough, a team of uniformed men was surrounding the building with caution tape. "He wouldn't do this," Eleanor murmured, grabbing her phone. "Not on the eve of the festival." "He would," William replied, recognizing the tactic. "That's how Vanderbilt operates. He waits until the last moment, when he thinks we don't have time to react." Emily moved closer to the window, her hand instinctively finding William's. "All the children's work, all the preparations." "No," Eleanor declared firmly, already typing on her phone. "We're not letting this happen. I have some contacts in the court who can issue an emergency injunction. And I'll call Isabella," Claire added. "The public needs to know that Vanderbilt is trying to destroy his own family's legacy." Olivia watched the commotion outside with determination in her eyes. "The children, they need to rehearse. We can't let this affect tomorrow's performance." "I agree," Emily replied, turning back to the new piano. "Let's continue the rehearsal, louder and stronger than ever." As the sisters gathered the frightened children and began to play, their voices rising above the noise of the external chaos, William and Eleanor exchanged determined glances. Father and daughter, once divided, were now united in a common purpose. "I'll handle the legal part," Eleanor declared, already heading out with Claire. "And I'll pay a visit to old Anthony," William decided. "It's time for a frank conversation between old acquaintances." The notes of spring promises filled the air, carrying a message of hope and resilience. Outside, the caution tape fluttered in the wind, but inside the conservatory, the music continued. Because some promises must be kept, some places must be preserved, and some loves are worth any fight. The night of the Spring Festival arrived with a special magic in the air. Despite the caution tape still clinging to the conservatory building, hundreds of people filled the central square of Spring Valley. Colored lights hung between the ancient trees. Food stalls spread tempting aromas through the air, and an improvised stage had been set up on the church steps. Backstage at the conservatory, transformed into a makeshift dressing room, Emily and Olivia were putting the finishing touches on the performances. Their long blue dresses shimmered under the lights, creating an ethereal effect that perfectly matched the night's atmosphere. "The children are ready," Emily informed, adjusting the bow tie of a nervous little violinist. "I've never seen them so focused." "It's because they understand what's at stake," Olivia replied, flipping through the sheet music one last time. "Children always know more than we think." Eleanor burst through the back door, her elegant red dress contrasting with her worried face. "Anthony Vanderbilt just arrived, and he's not alone. He brought a team of lawyers, and even a bailiff." "And Isabella?" Claire asked, looking up from her laptop where she was typing furiously. "She hasn't arrived yet," Eleanor answered, checking her phone, "but she promised she'd be here before the main performance." Outside, the crowd was already beginning to stir. Mayor Paul Johnson stepped onto the makeshift stage to kick off the festival, his voice trembling slightly into the microphone. "Citizens of Spring Valley and dear visitors, welcome to our Spring Festival. Tonight is more than a cultural celebration. It is a declaration of love for our town and its traditions. William watched everything from a discreet corner, his heart racing not just from the tension of the moment, but mostly from the sight of Emily at the piano, rehearsing the final chords with the children. In recent days, his love for her had grown in a way he could barely comprehend, a love that included and respected the unique bond she shared with Olivia. The performances began. Folk dance groups, church choirs, local bands, each act was a living demonstration of the rich cultural tapestry that made up Spring Valley. Between performances, Claire took the stage to share stories of the town, always highlighting the central role of the conservatory in shaping the region's culture. Anthony Vanderbilt watched everything with an unreadable expression, occasionally whispering something to his lawyers. The bailiff held an envelope that everyone suspected contained the final eviction notice. Finally, the moment of the main performance arrived. When Emily and Olivia took the stage with their children's choir, a reverent silence fell over the square. The new grand piano had been placed center stage, gleaming under the spotlight. But before they could begin, a commotion in the crowd caught everyone's attention. An elegant, middle-aged woman was making her way toward the stage, carrying an old briefcase. "Isabella?" Anthony Vanderbilt murmured, his face losing some of its color. Isabella Vanderbilt gracefully stepped onto the stage and took the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. I am Isabella Vanderbilt, and I have something important to share before this performance begins." She opened the briefcase she was carrying, revealing pages yellowed with age. "These are the diaries of my grandmother, Anna Vanderbilt. Allow me to read an excerpt from the last entry, written just days before she passed away." The silence in day. The square was absolute as she began to read. "My dear conservatory, my greatest achievement. Within these walls I saw dreams flourish and talents blossom. May these notes continue to echo through the years, reminding everyone that music knows no barriers of class, status, or circumstance. This is my legacy to Spring Valley. Not a building, but a dream of transformation through art." Isabella lifted, her eyes from the diary staring directly at her father. "And along with this diary I found this." She held up another document. The original conservatory record, with a special clause that makes it a perpetual cultural heritage of the city. Any attempt to alter or demolish it would not only be morally wrong but legally impossible. Anthony Vanderbilt stepped forward, his expression finally softening. "Isabella, why did you never show me this before?" "Because you never asked, Dad. You were never interested in Grandma's true legacy." A moment of understanding passed between father and daughter. Anthony made a gesture, and his lawyers stepped back. The bailiff put away his envelope. Slowly, a genuine smile, perhaps the first in many years, spread across the businessman's face. "So," he said, his voice carrying an unexpected emotion, "I guess it's time to listen to some music." Emily and Olivia exchanged emotional glances before taking their places at the piano. The children from the choir lined up, their faces glowing with anticipation. As the first chords of Promises of Spring echoed through the square, it was as if all of Spring Valley breathed in unison. The music spoke of transformation, of unlikely encounters, of loves that transcend the conventional. The sisters' voices, intertwined in perfect harmony, echoing the extraordinary connection that had bound them since birth. The choir children joined the melody, their pure voices lifting the music to celestial heights. William, watching the scene with tears in his eyes, felt Eleanor's hand find his. Father and daughter, finally reconciled, shared a smile of mutual understanding. "They are extraordinary," Eleanor whispered. "They truly are," William agreed, his heart overflowing with love. "All of them." As the music continued to fill the night with its magic, Spring Valley celebrated not only the preservation of its cultural heritage, but the birth of something new, a love story that defied conventions, a family healing from old wounds, a community coming together to protect its dreams. And at the center of it all, two extraordinary sisters who, through their music and their love, had taught everyone a valuable lesson, that the greatest transformations begin in the most unlikely places, and that true love, whether between Father and daughter between a man and two inseparable sisters, or between a city and its traditions, always finds a way to flourish.